What's something you can swear you saw but no one is believing you? I live in a rural community in Canada. My sister came to see me once and swore up and down that she saw a zebra grazing in the fields. I made fun of her for a couple of years about how the zebra roamed the North Pole and how Santa has zebra instead of reindeer. She was really starting to doubt herself but stuck to her guns. Well, I was driving one day and lo and behold, a fucking zebra grazing in the field. Turns out a zoo sometimes lets them roam around there. When I told my sister, she felt vindicated. Edit, thanks for the awards and stuff, guys. Since this has come up a lot, this was near between Orangeville and Arthur, and was about 10 years ago. I saw my uncle fall from the roof as he was escaping a house fire. He was able to get inside the car and take off, but not before the house toppled over on top of the car. After a few minutes he appeared out of the smoke, limping away. I distinctly remember running back to my house, right next door, to tell my mom about what had just happened. We go outside and nothing. No fire, no smashed car, no house falling over. I don't know what the fuck 5-year-old me was smoking, but I had the hardest time processing what had just happened or not happened. My mom was so angry with me for coming up with such an awful lie about her little brother. Till this day, 27 years old now, I can't explain what, why, or how I saw what I saw, but I very much remember the terrifying feeling I felt during and afterwards. Mom thinks I must have fallen asleep playing outside and woke up from a nightmare and panicked, but whatever it was, it felt too real. When I was little, maybe 7, the son of a lady who babysat my brother and I, cut his leg on our swing set. Green goo came out of his leg. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the type of bolt it was, the cover was missing to prevent cuts. I'm a dentist now, taken gross anatomy, dissected a human body, routinely in the operating room for resections of crazy head and neck tumors. With the exception of gross infections, I've never seen green goo come out of someone, let alone a healthy leg. It will never make sense to me. Ever. When we were 10 years old, all of my cousins and siblings were playing hide and seek in the dark in the middle of a park. When someone gets found, you join the seeker to look for people, but you can't tell them where they are. I was the seeker and I had just found one of my cousins, so we were walking around and looking for the rest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone that looked exactly like my brother run past us at inhuman speed. I turned to look at my cousin and he had admitted that he saw the same thing. We found my brother later in the round, but he was at the other side of the park. Nobody believes either of us, but both of us still remember it. Edit, no, we were not all 10 years old. Me and the other seeker were 10 years old. I stayed over at church friend's house when I was 8-ish. He said he had a little sister, but my parents and I never saw her at church or anything. My mom said it was probably imaginary. At night I walked in the wrong room and saw a teenage girl in a crib, dressed like a baby. I told my mom, I told my friends, I told whoever I could, but no one believed me. What the hell? So do you still see him and his family? Have you ever seen this girl out anywhere? Did you ever go to his house again after that? We still saw him at church for a couple years. I was never over his house again and they shunned me after I brought it up a couple times. My mom even punished me because I was lying. Kept telling my mom and sister I was seeing UFOs. Kept happening really regularly and frequently. Eventually I got them all to come outside because it was about time for one to show up. And it did. It was a stealth bomber being test flown, long before the public announcement about them went out or any pics were leaked. Blew all of our minds. When I was 12, I stayed with my great aunt while my mother and brother ran to the grocery to get lunch stuff. She took me into her basement and introduced me to her husband. Her long dead husband. Whose remains were in a Ziploc in a file drawer, neatly filed. She made a big deal about how she bought a brand new box of Ziplocs for him instead of reusing one. She was all about the frugality, my great aunt. No one believed me until after she died. When my mother and aunt found the remains in the Ziploc in the file drawer. When I was living with my parents, our small dog jumped straight up onto the kitchen counter. It was super high, but he made it. He only did it once and I witnessed it, but my family calls BS every time I say it really happened. I saw a dude standing next to my truck with an unnaturally wide smile. I was on Highway 49 East right outside Greenwood, Mississippi. I heard hail hit my truck a few times, so I pulled over expecting a tornado. I was grabbing my backpack getting ready to bail out for the ditch. I turned back to the driver's side window to check my mirror and this guy was just standing there, smiling. It scared me so bad I just slammed the truck in drive and got out of there. Like a smile from the video for Black Hole Sun? I've never seen this. But someone else suggested Indrid Cold. I went and read about him and looked at a few sketches. Those sketches resemble the smile I saw. What if it was a hitchhiker trying to look friendly and you just left him alone in the Hail Lamau? It sounds like he looked creepy as fuck though, so I don't blame you for taking off. It may have been. My only counter-argument is that this particular highway doesn't see hitchhikers for a number of reasons. 1. You're in between nothing and nowhere. 2. The only place to visit around there is the state prison. 3. It's a 2-lane highway, 1 lane east, 1 west being farmland. There isn't much of a shoulder. Due to flooding it's just a 4 to 8 feet drop off onto whatever field is below the road, so no room for walking. Was playing with my cousin and a friend of ours outside. We were riding our bikes and had a bunch of fun, but couldn't explore that far from where I live since we were like 7 or 8 years old. As we were cheerfully cycling down a long road behind a parking garage near my apartment, I started to slow down as I was getting tired of it. Both of them were continuing to cycle down the road as they haven't noticed me being left behind yet. You have to understand that the location of the road was right in between the parking garage, with 2 floors, and a fence which has only rails on the other side and was usually deserted. So once I stopped cycling, I could only turn tail or follow the road ahead. After reaching my limit, I simply stopped my bike midway after a while and tried to catch some breath. While doing so, something caught my eye on the backstairs of the parking garage. I tried to get closer to check out what it was out of curiosity, but boy was that a mistake. I spotted a man who seemed to kneel down behind a wall of the backstairs. Didn't seem suspicious at first, however, after a closer look I saw what seemed like knife covered in blood. My body froze and all I could feel was fear that went through my body, which felt like it lasted for minutes. The man just started to catch on with me standing on road and began to slowly stand up and face my direction. I was somehow able to get my brain back to process and bolted down the street with any power I had left in me. After passing both my cousin and friend, as well as leaving a big distance to where I spotted him, I started to break down in tears and explaining what happened. No one would believe me, since they went back to check and found nothing strange. Got so traumatized from it that I avoided the road until my mid-teens. TLDR, saw a man with a knife covered in blood behind a parking garage while cycling as kid and no one would believe. When I was a kid I ate some of my grandmother's heart medication and nearly died. Was rushed to the hospital to have my stomach pumped, and I have a memory of looking down at myself on the hospital bed with my mom and hospital staff around me. It still is one of the only things I've had happen that I cannot explain, and no one I've told this story to believes me at all. Even my super religious aunt said it was my imagination. A few years back I saw a capybara in my front yard. In Alabama. No one believed me because by the time I came back with my phone he was gone. The best I got was I guess it might have been a capybara, after a local man was found to have his own exotic animal collection less than 3 miles away. Other animals I saw in that yard, an emu and 2 bison. I must have lived pretty close to that dude's land. Edit to add, it was definitely a capybara. I watched it for several minutes and estimated its weight somewhere around 100 to 130 pounds. Dude also had a panther escape in the area which brought in state wildlife officials. A few months ago, I was at work. I worked opening shift, 4:30 a.m., that morning, and one of my coworkers was late. I heard the door open and I saw a shadow walk towards the door to the back. It stays locked to keep customers out, so I opened it, but no one was there. I figured he just went to the bathroom. Like 20 minutes later, I go to my manager. Me, hey, I think employee took off. I saw them earlier but they never came in. Manager, employee is in North Carolina taking care of his family. Me and 2 others were closing a store one night. 2 of us were in the back wrapping up cleaning while the other was setting up stations for morning shift. All of a sudden me and the one other in the bank heard violent coughing. The person putting the stations together up front was a big smoker, so not unusual. Well, this cough went on about 15 plus seconds and we got concerned. We round the corner to check on him as he rounds it to check on us. All 3 of us looking at each other, and then immediately the coughing stops. Store is locked and closed for almost 35 minutes now. We checked every corner of the building and found nothing. Finished up and left. Once we were outside we all saw someone just seemingly appear in the front lobby through the glass and walk around to the back door. Called district managers, general managers, and police. We ended up giving statements and having camera footage pulled to see nothing. Needless to say, we got in trouble for making up some story, but we all remember seeing it very, very clearly and had no explanations. 6 years ago I went through 10 surgeries for a badly broken leg. During one of the surgeries early on, I have distinct memories of waking up and hearing, seeing, and smelling several minutes of the surgery. I also remember a nurse looking me in the eye and then telling someone I was awake. I then passed back out, presumably due to more anesthesia. No one believes me that this happened. I'm now terribly afraid of surgery and hope I never have to enter another operating room. This happened to me. I woke up during a knee surgery and heard the surgeon arguing with the anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist said something like, "You, the surgeon, tell me you're going to be X amount of time longer and then you tell me you're finished." I also heard the surgeon say, "He's, me, fatter on the outside than he is on the inside." The surgeon said it wasn't possible that I woke up during surgery, but when I repeated back what was said, the look on his face told me he knew I was telling the truth. On the bike path, a man riding a beach cruiser one-handed, no shirt but wearing a huge sombrero, carrying a fawn cradled in his other arm. Myself from several feet away. I was very, very tired and I was walking up the steps at my house. I remember watching myself from an angle that wouldn't have been possible. But I remember it clear as day. You accidentally entered third-person mode, nothing weird there. My betta fish disappeared out of a covered tank. And then reappeared in front of my eyes. If you can imagine, this tank is clear plastic on all sides, including the bottom. There's nowhere to hide when it's empty, the only thing not transparent is the metal lid. Betta fish are known to hide, so I didn't worry about not seeing him for a couple days, but on day 3 I got worried, so I took the heater and filter out. Checked the inside of the filter, took the plants out, took the hides out. No fish. Nothing in the tank but water and glass rocks now, so I started scooping the rocks out, thinking he may have gotten trapped under there and died. Pretty soon I'm staring at a tank with nothing but water in it. No fish. I figured there's no way he's still alive, so I start scooping the water out. It's about 3/4 full when suddenly my fish does one of those fishy slow turns in the dead center of the tank. There he was. It wasn't like I turned away and then back and my fish was there. No, I was staring at the tank, and I quite literally saw him swim back into existence. 1 second he wasn't there, the next he was. I moved him to a smaller bowl for a few days to keep an eye on him. Covered the top with perforated plastic wrap to ensure no jumping. He disappeared from the bowl a couple days later and never came back. Have owned several betta fish, and I can honestly say no other fish has ever dimension hopped out of a tank since. Once while in a drained pool, I heard a droning sound. It kept getting louder and louder, when a massive cloud of bees slowly flew overhead and into the distance. That's a swarm. When the colony gets too big for its hive, it starts making a new queen. Then half the bees leave with the old queen, what you saw, to find another place to live. Cool experience. I have clear and distinct memories from when I was still in diapers and a crib. No one in my family believed me until I described the exact layout of my room at the time, bed and dressers included. We don't have any photos of this room, so this isn't a false memory situation like my brother said. I even described a time my mom gave me cough medicine in a Mickey Mouse spoon from before I could even talk. It's weird because my short-term memory is trash, but my long-term memory is absolutely unreal. I absolutely believe you because I have a similar memory. My earliest memory is standing up in the early morning, holding onto my crib rail, and kind of deciding to cry. Then my dad comes and says some kind words and picks me up. I was at my boyfriend's house. We woke up and I made us bagels and cream cheese. I put mine in the toaster and walked his over to him. When I came back, the toaster was propped up on its side, stacked on something else. I certainly didn't do it, nor did I bump it as I walked away. When I left, it was sitting flat on the counter toasting my bagel. I have no explanation for how it happened as he was in the backyard. I would immediately assume it was some kind of parasite situation and there was a person living in the house without me knowing. In summer camp as a kid, I went to the bathroom late at night. To get there, you had to go up this big hill covered with rocks, almost like a gravel driveway. So I go up there and first thing I see on the floor is a giant smushed piece of poop with a human footprint in the middle, toes and all. I couldn't stop laughing as I went to the bathroom and went back to the cabin. None of the other kids believed me when I told them, and it was gone the next day. Lamau. My sister and the neighbor kid used to both see the man. Some guy that nobody else could see. My dad saw something in that place too, refuses to talk about it to this day, 30 years later. It could be hallucinations, bro. When I was a kid about 6 to 8 years old, I was absolutely certain I saw, heard and communicated with a ghostly boy from World War II. My stepmother saw him too, but never talked to her. He asked me where his sister was. My stepsister saw soldiers look through the window. I believe the three of us saw some things because it was a creaky, kinda isolated building in a rural area. It was creepy as fuck. We also found bullets from World War II in the garden, which I believe to have also forced some fear into us. I live in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in between Milwaukee and Chicago, and have seen a mountain lion twice in the area. Everyone just stares at me when I tell them lol. Also, I've seen a BMW with the turn signal on, but only once. Not something I saw, something I felt and heard. I was struggling to sleep one night, lying in bed feeling wired and irritable when I felt pressure lift from the bed on my partner's side. I assumed he'd got up to go to the bathroom. I was facing the opposite way, so I didn't see him do this. A few minutes go by and I hear him come back into the room and feel him get back in bed. Nothing strange about that. Lying there still frustrated, the same thing happens again. A lift of pressure, some rustling sounds like a person trying to navigate a dark room, an absence of sound for a few moments, and then the sensation of weight on the bed again. Still not thinking much of it, because it wasn't an obvious cause for concern. I continue trying to fall asleep. Then it happens again. And again. And again. I wasn't too into the idea of asking him if he was okay, as we had a ridiculous argument that night and I was pretty pissed off with him, so I just ignored it. But then it sounded like he had got up and was simply pacing around the room clumsily. I could hear things on the shelves being touched and slightly moved and hands gently brushing against walls, and then I felt the bed suddenly dip in a concentrated spot of the mattress as though he had stood on it. This carries on for I don't know how long, rustling, pressure on the bed and so on until I snap. I sit bolt upright, turn around and say, "What the hell are you doing?" To see my partner waking up from a very deep sleep and looking confused. I told him what had happened and he said he'd been asleep next to me the whole time, which was pretty obvious to see him in his very sleepy state, plus he would have had mere seconds to jump into bed without me noticing in the time it took me to sit up and turn around. I somehow fell asleep that night feeling confused and as though eyes were on me. And in a typical cheesy haunted house fashion, I get a call from my mom the next morning telling me my uncle had died the night before. That's terrifying. Sorry about your uncle. The story of my uncle is stranger than the one above. He went missing for 27 years. He was a very, very sick man, mentally speaking, and he had escaped from the institution he'd been staying at. My mom searched for him high and low, tirelessly. She constantly asked the police for help, hired private investigators and contacted TV shows, all to no avail. For 26 whole years she just wouldn't and couldn't let it go, until she did. She decided enough was enough, it was making her sick, she accepted he was clearly dead, and around a year after making that decision she was contacted by a farmer who had spotted a makeshift tent on the outermost part of his massive land, and it was my uncle. This farmer helped my uncle, he fed him, clothed him, called him an ambulance when he passed out one time, and slowly got information out of him about who he was and where he came from. I will never in my life forget my mom's ashen face as she told me a stranger had called saying her brother was alive and living in his field. My brothers went to get him and bring him home right away, but he had been living off-grid for so long he was no longer classed as a British citizen and was treated as though he didn't even exist. They managed to get him a flat somehow, but getting a doctor was near on impossible and he was as sick mentally as he ever was. He claimed he saw the devil frequently and would occasionally take on the persona of his dead father, which scared my mom terribly as he was a very abusive man. Anyway, my uncle was spoiled rotten by my whole family for 18 months until one night he died of a burst aortic aneurysm that nobody knew he had. The same thing my other uncle died from exactly a year later, and the same thing my mom had surgery for just 2 weeks ago and is recovering from. When my uncle's flat was cleaned out, there were many notebooks filled with his conversations and experiences with the devil. It was very distressing for my poor mom, and one of my brothers threw it away.